Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to our 4 o'clock press workshop, the Carbon Mineral Challenge, a worldwide hunt for new carbon minerals. Our speakers this afternoon will be Robert Hazen, Senior Staff Scientist at the Carnegie Institution of Washington, Daniel Hummer, Postdoctoral Scholar at the Carnegie Institution of Washington, and Barbara Lafuente, PhD candidate at the University of Arizona.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. I'm Bob Hazen, Executive Director of the Deep Carbon Observatory, and I'm just delighted to have you here and be able to tell you about one of our exciting new projects. The Deep Carbon Observatory is dedicated to understanding the quantities, the forms, the movements, and the origins of carbon from crust to core in planet Earth. We have 1,000 collaborators in 40 countries studying all aspects of carbon. We have core funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, and we're more than halfway through our 10-year adventure. And today I want to tell you about just one of dozens and dozens of different activities that the Deep Carbon Observatory is involved in. And this is the Carbon Mineral Challenge, where we're going to try to predict and find the missing minerals of the element carbon. This is all based on a very new approach to mineralogy. For centuries, mineralogists have found minerals by serendipity. A new mineral is discovered by chance. But in the last year, we've discovered new mathematical tools to predict the minerals that are missing, and this is called mineral ecology. It's the study of the diversity and distribution of minerals on Earth, and the way we do this is employing comprehensive mineral data resources and also statistical methods. So we now have data on more than 5,000 mineral species, more than 135,000 mineral localities, and 650,000 mineral species and locality pairs. And this is enough data to start doing statistical tests. But no one thought of doing this until I went with a friend, a biologist friend, on a walk in a redwood forest. And what struck me forcibly after talking about ecological principles was that the distribution of biomass in a redwood forest is identical to the distribution of minerals in Earth's crust. That is, most of the biomass occurs in just a few species, like redwoods, but almost all the diversity is in small and rare species. So, biologists have mathematical approaches to this, but we can't use those because the mineral species aren't distributed in quite the same way. It turns out that the mineral species are distributed like words in a book. And thanks to the NSA, who is very interested in searching out and understanding unsigned documents, the techniques that they use are the ones that we can use mathematically. Most words are common, like a, and the, but it's the rare words that define the diversity, the authorship, the genre of a book. And so one can predict an author's total vocabulary just by examining the words in a single book or long document. We do the same thing. And on this graph, you'll see on the horizontal scale the number of localities at which a mineral is found. On the vertical scale, the probability of finding a mineral at exactly that number of localities. Now, there are a few extremely common minerals, thousands and thousands of localities. There are others that are rare, but not that rare. Diamond, it turns out, 700 localities. That's pretty common. But look, 8% of all minerals are known at exactly 3 localities, and 22% are known at only a single locality. And this leads to a kind of distribution called a large number of rare event distribution. More than 1,000 mineral species found at only 1 locality. 600 found at 2. And here you see both the data in white and our model in blue. And the model allows us to make predictions about the accumulation curve for minerals. Now, accumulation curves are well known in biology. On the left here, you see one for just going into an area and counting the first species you find, and then the second individual and the third. And as you find more individuals, you find more and more species, but that number gradually tails off asymptotically to the number of predicted species. The same thing can be seen on the right with genome data in biology. We use the exact same kinds of mathematics. Here is the minerals discovered up to today, and we can extrapolate into the future, finding that there's roughly 1,500 mineral species that are on Earth but have yet to be discovered. Now, what are they? What are those minerals? We can focus in on individual elements, and here is where the carbon mineral challenge comes in, because we focus on carbon, finding that there are 406 carbon minerals known today from about 83,000 species localities pair. But if you extrapolate into the future, you see that there are about 150 more mineral species that must exist on Earth, but have not yet been identified. We can look at subsets, carbon plus oxygen, that tell us that most of those missing minerals are carbonates, and we do other tricks of this sort to tell us what the missing minerals are. We can also go to ranks of synthetic compounds that are well known. Here are the known 5 sodium carbonates, but synthetically there are 2 other very, very common and easily synthesized compounds that are not yet known as minerals. We predict they're out there, as well as some sodium carbonates, which are extremely interesting. And we can tell you where to go to find them. You go to Lake Natron in Tanzania, where there are all sorts of sodium carbonates found. We can look at hydrocarbon minerals known as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are known minerals. These are ones that haven't been found yet, and you go to places where there are coal mine fires, and I'll bet you will find them there too. So we're poised to discover dozens of new carbon-bearing minerals. I'm going to turn the podium over to Dan Hummer, who's going to tell you about the Carbon Mineral Challenge and how we're going to run this international competition. Thanks.
All right, thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Daniel Hummer, and I'm going to be heading up the Carbon Mineral Challenge. And I'm just going to tell you briefly about why we're doing this and how we're going to go about doing this. So the basic question that we're trying to answer is, can we go out and actually discover new minerals through a deliberate targeted search? And something like this in the history of science has never been done before. We've never discovered minerals like this before. So we want to find out if it's possible and conduct this really first-of-a-kind search. And we have a number of goals. Of course, we're all mineralogists up here, so we care about the diversity of minerals that we find in the world, and so we want to expand our knowledge of the mineral kingdom. We also, in this study that Bob just described to us, has predicted a number of specific carbon minerals that we think are out there but we don't know about yet. And so we want to do the classic scientific method and test our predictions. If we don't test our predictions, then we have nothing. And finally, we want to learn about the unique chemistry of carbon in nature, because as I'll show on the next slide, the chemistry of carbon tells us a lot overall about the chemistry of the Earth. So why are we specifically looking for minerals of carbon? There are a number of reasons. We know that on the surface of the Earth, carbon is an extremely abundant element. We see it everywhere. We see it in trees, we see it in the soil, we see it dissolved in water, there's CO2 in the air, and all of us are all made of carbon. So it's literally everywhere to be found. We know that it's very geologically important. Bob just mentioned carbonate minerals, in particular, minerals with carbon and oxygen, and a large amount of the Earth's surface is covered with rocks, and a large amount of the sea floor actually is covered with these carbonate rocks. We know that life is based on the unique chemistry of carbon. If it weren't for carbon's unique ability to bond to itself over and over again and form these long molecules, none of us in this room would exist right now. And finally, carbon is just a very chemically diverse element. It can play a variety of different chemical roles in a structure, and it bonds and forms compounds with practically every other element on the periodic table. So when we learn more about the chemistry of carbon, we learn more about the chemistry of the Earth and what kinds of chemical environments are possible on Earth. So Bob just talked about this statistical extrapolation that we can do, and that tells us about how many carbon minerals we do know about and how many carbon minerals we don't know about. And as he mentioned, there are 406 carbon minerals that we know about, and our study predicts that there are about 145 ones that we don't know about. And if you look at these numbers, this is a sizable fraction of the number of carbon minerals on Earth. So there's the potential that we could find minerals that are as interesting or even more interesting than the ones that we do know about. And in fact, these things could be hiding anywhere. One of the people on our engagement team found this, a rock sample that contains the carbon mineral graphite in her own backyard. So you never know. We could go and find these things anywhere. So how are we going to go about finding all these missing minerals? Well, in short, we want to spread the word. We want to spread the word as far as we can to a number of different kinds of communities. Some of them listed right here. First of all, we want to talk to professional mineralogists at museums and universities all over the world that have access to large mineral collections where we might be able to find new and interesting things. We want to advertise to scientific journals and societies that are interested in minerals, like the Mineralogical Society of America, Geochemical Society, and so forth. But most importantly, there's actually a vast community around the world of mineral collectors who are very passionate about finding mineral specimens, finding new and interesting mineral specimens. And many of these people have so much experience going around the world and collecting these things that they know more mineral species and more mineral localities than the three of us who are standing up here today. So we want to talk to those people. We want to reach those people, talk to those communities, and get them involved looking at samples and trying to find some of these new things. So in terms of structure, we have an advisory board, an international advisory board, composed of about 25 professional mineralogists from every region of the world. Many of them we've already spoken to, some we haven't, but the ones we've spoken to, their pictures are shown up here, and you can see it's a very diverse group of people. And they're going to be helping us do a couple of things. They're going to help us advertise to the scientists and the mineral collectors in their region of the world, communities and clubs and so forth, that we wouldn't know how to contact directly. But with these folks' help, we'll be able to reach many, many more people. And they're going to assist us with analyzing samples and directing people where to go to help analyze their samples to see if, in fact, they do have a new carbon mineral, potentially. And that process is something that I'll let Barbara talk about. So to sum up, the Carbon Mineral Challenge is starting right now, today, here in this room, and it will run through about September of 2019. It's open to professional mineralogists, to amateur collectors, to anyone who finds something interesting out there. We want as many people to be involved as possible. We're going to be holding an event in 2019 to showcase what we find from this challenge. We're going to get everyone together and take a look at what we've collectively discovered. We haven't planned that event yet, but we look forward to planning it. And the new minerals are going to be verified through a process governed by this International Mineralogical Association that I'll let Barbara describe to you in more detail. So I'll turn it over to her now.
Hi, thank you for being here. So we have learned from Bob and Dan what's mineral ecology and what's the Carbon Mineral Challenge. I would like to emphasize here that the discovery and naming of new minerals is very well established in the community. So with these exciting projects, we don't want to create anything new. What we want is to use this process and all the results from Bob's study to expand the possibilities on mineral discovery. So as a bit of historical background, the publication of mineral description started in 1775 with the beginning of modern mineralogy. As you can see in this histogram that shows the frequency of new mineral discovery from 1775 until now, there was a relative constant pace of new mineral discovery until 1950. You can see there are 3 years in which the discovery of new minerals increased a lot, but that's because of the publication of mineralogy books that we could say that were the earliest public available databases for minerals. The big jump around 1950 is probably due to the development of better automated techniques for measuring chemistry and crystallographic properties. And the spike around 2005 could indicate the onset of spectroscopy technique and also the development and growth of online databases. So what's a new mineral? To answer this question, we need to know that a mineral is mainly defined by its chemical composition. In other words, what chemical elements it's composed of. And we also, it's also defined by its crystal structure, how these atoms are arranged inside the structure. So we can see this with two well-known examples. So both diamond and graphite are entirely made of carbon, which can be simple, but the way that these carbon atoms are arranged in the space is totally different, making them two different minerals with very distinct properties. Who wants graphite in an engaged ring, right? For example, other minerals like calcite or rhodochrosite, they have similar crystal structures. However, their composition is different, making them two different minerals as well. So we can say that the chemical composition and the crystal structure are the key factors on the discovery of minerals. So answering the question, what's a new mineral, we can say that a new mineral is a mineral whose composition, crystal structure, or maybe both, is significantly different from those from existing minerals. So how we actually discover new minerals? Well, the process of proving that we have discovered a new mineral is quite involving and sometimes requires a lot of time and research because we use complex techniques and the data processing is quite intense. For the chemical composition, we usually use electron microprobe, a technique in which a beam of electrons excites the atoms inside the material and release an X-ray fingerprint identifying the chemical elements that are inside the mineral. To measure the crystallographic properties, we normally use a single crystal X-ray diffraction. In this case, the X-ray is interacting with the planes of atoms, and that tells us where these atoms are located on the structure. So the results from these two techniques then need to be compared with databases, like the American Mineralogists Crystal Structure Database with a lot of crystal structures, the RAF database that has information in high quality spectral data, or MinDat with a lot of information about minerals. So once we know that we have a new mineral, we need to make it official. So all the minerals need to be approved by the Commission of New Minerals Nomenclature and Classification of the American Mineralogical Association. So to get this approval, we need to submit a new mineral proposal containing all the information about the mineral and the proposed name. So once the proposal and the name are approved, we have 2 years to publish the description of the mineral. So the list of all the approved minerals can be found at the IMA database of mineral properties. This website is great, and I'm not saying this because it's our baby at the University of Arizona, but I'm saying it because it provides in only one place all the information for minerals, and it's open access to everybody. So if you want to learn a bit more about carbon minerals, you just need to select carbon in the periodic table, and it will give you the list of all carbon minerals that is 406, as Dan and Bob has said before. Thank you.
Yeah, 1 second. Oh, yes. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, if you can turn the lights up a little bit. Sure. We'll now open the floor to any reporters in the room who have questions. Please raise your hand.
We have a promotional video if we're within our 20 minutes.
Sure,
we have
go
a
ahead.
promotional video that we'd love to show people if you're interested in seeing it.
Then we'll go to questions.
Yes, here we are. Make sure
It's
that.
in this.
Oh, hang on. There was a line of dialogue before that.
That's it. That's okay. Let's let it go.
It's in this, and these, and even in this. But it's also in all of these. Carbon minerals come in a variety of shapes, sizes, colors, and textures. Even this diamond is entirely carbon. As of 2015, collectors have identified 406 carbon minerals. But scientists estimate more than 140 remain undiscovered, and we need your help finding them. The Deep Carbon Observatory is launching the Carbon Mineral Challenge, a first-of-its-kind quest to find our planet's undiscovered carbon minerals. Our goal is to locate as many as possible in the next 4 years. Since 2010, collectors have identified an average of 4 new ones each year. What if we could double that, or even triple it? To help in your search, we've identified some promising locations where you may want to start looking. But actually finding them, that's up to you. The Carbon Mineral Challenge is a worldwide hunt. The next mineral might be found halfway across the globe, or maybe in your own backyard. This is your chance to be part of history. Join the journey. The search starts now.
Right. So that video was prepared for us by the digital productions team at the Smithsonian. So I want to thank all of them, with the help of my brother, actually. So I want to thank all of them for helping us with that. And we'll open it up to questions now.
Are there any reporters in the room who have questions? Okay.
Hello, Thomas Sumner, Science News. So I was wondering, do you have an example of a recently discovered mineral and kind of where it came from?
Good question. Well, have you worked on a couple of new minerals?
Actually, I've been working in a new mineral that then it turned out not being a new mineral. So, so that's what I
elusive.
wanted to say about that implies a lot of work, because sometimes you think that you have a new mineral and then you realize that not. So, but you refer to carbon minerals or any type of mineral? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was involved in the discovery of a new mineral called fingerite, named after a good friend and colleague of mine. It's found on the flanks of a volcano in Chile. It occurs as small green crystals rich in vanadium, and every time it rains, the entire world's supply of fingerite disappears, and you have to wait for more volcanic fumes to create new minerals. So some of these occur in very dangerous places. Some of them are very ephemeral. It's going to take very sharp-eyed collectors to go around the world and find these things.
Are there any other questions? Zoe, are there any questions from reporters on the chat?
Yes. From Elizabeth Wilson of Chemical and Engineering News. How does one determine if a sample appears unusual enough to warrant examination? Are there certain criteria, or is it easy to recognize known minerals?
Well, in many cases, mineralogists are pretty easily able to recognize the most common minerals and some of the less common minerals as well. So it does take a certain amount of experience. Sometimes different minerals can look to the eye very much the same, and you have to do chemical tests in the lab in order to distinguish them. But there's also, there are many localities where mineralogists and collectors are very familiar with the kinds of minerals that come from those localities, and they know how to identify a dozen different minerals that come from that locality. So if they see a crystal that seems to be different than any of the ones that they know come from that place, then that's a good tip-off. That's a tip-off that perhaps something new and interesting is there.
But one of the things that we've predicted, for example, those sodium carbonates I mentioned, is that these are often white minerals. They're often without distinctive crystal form. They just look like a white crusty powder. And if you have 7 or 8 minerals, all of which are white crusty powders, you might have identified 5 or 6 of them, and there are 2 that are still there. They're just waiting to be found. We think that many of the missing carbon minerals will be discovered in the drawers of museum collections when people go back and examine them with a little more care.
Are there any other questions in the room from reporters in the room?
Hi, Sarah Zelinsky, freelance. So you've predicted that there should be a certain number of minerals. Have you ever found any of those that you think should be there?
So the predictions are part of a paper that is only accepted and in press about 3 weeks ago. This is very new. The idea, the walk in the forest, was only about a year ago, and subsequent we have 6 papers that are published, a couple more that are in press, and another several that are in preparation right now or in review. So this is really exciting new things. This is why it's so timely to have this Carbon Mineral Challenge now, because we're really saying, we made these predictions, let's see if the predictions hold up. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next 4 years.
Hi, Maya Wejas with Smithsonian.com. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the distribution of the minerals that you were saying, how most are only found in one location, and if that relates in some way to kind of the evolution and diversification of minerals over time.
Yeah, it definitely does. And this is something that Bob has been studying for several years now and made a number of interesting discoveries. We think that the few most common minerals that we see on Earth are probably the result of processes that would inevitably produce those minerals. So in other words, you can be guaranteed in a certain chemical environment and in an environment where plate tectonics is happening, you would produce a certain number of these minerals. But then there are others that are just sort of chance occurrences that occur here or there, just based on very special conditions that happen to come together in the right place in the right time. And there's so much diversity of environments on Earth that produces a lot of these rare mineral species and therefore produces the characteristic variety that we see. So
Yeah, I think one of the most fun aspects of this is to think about why we see so many rare minerals. And if you think about it, each rare mineral represents a kind of mineralogical ecological niche. So why do we have so many niches on Earth but not on the Moon, not on Mars apparently? And I think it's because of life. Life creates all these local microenvironments, the extreme concentrations of elements and other sorts of juxtapositions that you wouldn't normally find. And so we think that possibly that large number of rare event distribution, that statistical distribution, is itself a biosignature. That's the speculation, and we have to look at other planets. We're looking at Mars very, very closely, and Barbara is part of the team that's thinking about Martian mineralogy very, very closely. So maybe you have some thoughts. Do you think you're going to see a few rare minerals on Mars, or?
Yeah, I think we should go there.
We should go there. Definitely.
Are there any other questions from reporters in the room? Zoe, are there any other questions on the chat?
No.
Okay, with that concludes our workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Up next is our at 5 o'clock press workshop, Aware, the most comprehensive meteorological study of Antarctica ever undertaken.